Alrighty. Are you guys there? Are you guys ready to go? Lock and loaded? Yeah?
Yay, Gabriel, how you
All right.
guys doing? Dehpue,
Good,
how are
good.
you, buddy?
Good, I'm doing fine. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace. We are here to talk about the economic roadmap post the CPP. Uh, and I have my usual suspects here, Depu, Professor Kennedy. We're going to talk about, the roadmap post the CPP that recently ended, supposedly, uh, you know, from the what was it, the Supreme Court ruling that pretty much dismantled the CPP. And as we would say in Liberia, everybody for themselves, God for us right now. That's pretty much where we stand. So, what we want to talk about today is, you know, where does each party stands right now in terms of honing their message to the Liberian people, how they differentiate themselves from the other parties. Now it's not anything about politics anymore. We're not looking at politics. On this show we never do. We look at the economic aspect. You can't say, hey, because I'm a you know the people like me, so that's what's going to be my message. It's all about, hey, what economic policy do I present to the people that is better off than Larry, that is better off than Depots? So on this show, that's what we would like to do today. We want to look at the economic roadmap that each party is going to take after this whole uh, dismantling of the CPP by the Supreme Court ruling. I think it was yesterday. So uh, welcome wherever you are. Take a minute, share, and we usually take about an hour and a half. So take about an hour and a half, grab a bottle of water, tea or whatever you drink, and just relax. And please do bring your questions. We do like this show to be interactive. So do bring your questions, and we will make this show interactive as possible. We'll make this show interactive today. So please do join us. Thank you. Larry, Depu.
Yeah, first, let me just wish my father-in-law, Johnny J. Wright, he's up there in Staten Island, speedy recovery. He's not doing well right now. And everyone who lived Staten Island on the Park Hill section, they know Johnny J. Wright, wishing him a speedy recovery. Yeah, so want this to be interactive session. The death of the CPP doesn't mean the death of discussing the issues in Liberia. I think now is the time to focus on the key bread and butter issue. What is it that people find? What is it that is important to the people? Is it creating jobs? Is it fighting corruption? Is it the wasteful spending? Is it the misappropriations? Is it the prices in the market, the price of gasoline, the price of food? All of those things. What should be the key issues for 2023 that the people want to hear from the political parties? Enough of the politics. Enough of the politics. Let's talk about those things that are impacting you. Healthcare, your children's education, things like that. We'll make this interactive. Put your question up. We'll read it, and then we'll take. We would like to, hear from the panelists what their opinions are, and if you have any suggestions, put it out there. But let's discuss this. For me, it's three items I'm really focused on. The corruption.
Okay.
I can't think of a country that has actually developed a highly corrupt country that has actually developed. I can't think of one of them. If you can think of a country that is highly corrupt and has developed, let us know, because we'd like to kind of take a look at it and see, hey, is this something that we can, maybe model or do something with? So also the economy. The economy is so important because if you don't have a job, you can't buy the food that you need. The people in the market will not be able to make money. The agriculture sector, different other sectors will die. Very important. We can also look at education and healthcare. Those two things are so critical. We had issues with vaccine in the country. What are we doing with some of the resources we have? This all, you see, the crazy thing is when there's some health crisis, the poor people can't afford to fly out of the country to Ghana or over to Europe or come to America. They can't do it.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the solutions? I bet you the Minister of Health doesn't even use the facilities that he's overlooking in the country. I bet when he's really sick, he flies out of the country. He doesn't use the system and services that he himself is in charge of. So let's talk about these issues. Okay, let me swing it to my partner, Dehpue.
Dehpue, Larry just covered a lot of, actually 3 items: corruption, economics, and the education and healthcare sectors, right? And at the end, he's talked about, we're going to look at solutions, right? So those are the 3 things you want to look at post this CPP uh, dismantling, right? What are your thoughts on the ruling, and what do you think that each party should be looking at now, or what do you think are important to their
I think
daily
this
life?
decision, thank you very much. Good evening to our listeners out there. I'm happy that this question is posed at a time that the Supreme Court already made a decision. But a couple of weeks ago, I was asking the same question. Why, if this situation remains as is, what will happen?
Mm,
And when I look at the fragility report, a world fragility report, you see that Liberia is already in a bad warning zone,
mm,
and we cannot afford to be in the bad shape as a country, and high warning, not even low warning, high warning zone,
mhm,
and seeing ourselves, the court system, the political actors, uh, and the key stakeholders are at loggerhead.
mhm,
It was worrisome. And the next thing that there is that you already seeing the global economy shaking and everything is troubling. Africans are feeling the weight. In fact, President Macky Sall and the EU chair, they have to go to Russia to go have a meeting with President Putin to see how best the impact of the Russian war, how it's already affecting Africa. So we need, as a country, we need to look at our domestic policy, how civilization strategy, and how to stabilize it. So the Supreme Court decision is good. I think it's in the interest of the state, and
mm.
uh, like all Liberians can take credit for this, and we all need to now sit down and recalibrate and see how best we can work together and bring peace in the country.
Wait, Gabriel, did I hear Dehpue right? You're saying the Supreme Court decision was in the best interest of the state?
You
I
heard
agree
it
with
here
it, though.
first.
I agree with it because if they hadn't put up, if they put that whole matter to bed, we would
Yeah,
still be talking about that. We'll still be
right,
discussing it.
right. No,
I agree with
I
Dehpue on that.
I I I agree. I agree with both of you, and I think Depu added to that list. So now we have 4 things we're looking at: the fragility report in terms of how fragile our economy is. That's something we never look at. We just keep inviting people in. We keep saying we want to invite people in, but if they go look out there and do their research and they see that this is a fragile country, you have to any investor look at the long term. You know impact of a country before they invest in it. So we now have 4 items. We have fighting corruption, the economics, and we're looking at the healthcare and education sector, and also the fragility report. But I want us to take maybe the next 20 minutes or so, 15 minutes to talk about this ruling. The Solicitor General, I think is CFAS.
CFOS. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's what is it, counselor, or how you call him, made a ruling yesterday that they are dropping the case, you know, and what is that? What does that mean for for each individual party right now? They're no longer binded by this CPP document that was one like a cohorts of people of parties, right? I mean, everybody's on their own right now. How do you think these people can differentiate themselves right now going forward? Because right now it's everybody in their own lane, and we just have a one target practice, which is the ruling party. So what is that? What does that ruling mean? And what is how do you think this each party can move forward?
Let me go quick, Jeff. My answer gonna be short. I think when I really came out, I think some of the political party actors then were happy and skipping all over Monrovia. They were probably out there jumping rope and excited about it because they
Right.
had been tied by the ankles and they couldn't really do anything, and this thing was hanging over their head like a dagger. But I see Hashim Fambula over here posting some good questions. We'll come to that. And let me say hello to my sister Swab Mapu. And Emmanuel Jackson, my brother out there in Massachusetts. Hello to you and Miata. So let me just say, hello to you guys. This Supreme Court ruling. You see, the crazy thing about it, well, first of all, there's a lesson learned in here. The lesson learned is be careful who you collaborate with, right? Because and also the second lesson is learn to read a contract. But in addition to that, the contract by itself, it sounds like, there was one set of expectations, and then it looks like somehow because the accusation was somebody changed this and changed that and so on and so forth. But what was surprising was no one caught on to the fact that at the beginning of any collaboration, expectations have to be set. Mm-hmm. If I get into collaboration right now with Dehpue and Gabriel, and we're all thinking, okay, running for a certain position at a company, we have to set expectations. We have to say, okay, you know something? We always support you, Dehpue, or we always support you, Gabriel, or we'll support you, Larry. Otherwise, we will start doing some underhanded, nasty stuff to undermine each other, and we'll not get anywhere. That's why collaboration never seems to work in other places. Right. If you set the expectations up front, everybody know, who's the chief and who's the Indian in this whole collaboration. But I don't think they ever said that. So let me swing it to my brother, Dehpue.
Dehpue, what's your take on this ruling?
Yes, I think that, as I said earlier, it's in the interest of the state. Realistically, if you look at what transpired, in fact, since the CPP arrangement, you realize that the actors themselves needed to have set a goal and say, look, this is what we want to achieve. And from there, they set objectives. This is how we want to do it. But one of the things initially which I personally had a problem with was that the first document that came up was that you were doing distribution of post or job distribution. Now, when it comes to job or title issue, and I have a concern that what's the objective? Are we looking for leadership? Because the thing about the country lacks leadership. The country has had problem because of lack of leadership. Our focus should not be about who takes what. The focus should be about who is the best leader, who's the right person to lead the country, and how. And that's become the objective. So how we do it, we're going to focus on education. So these things were not much of priority, but mainly about, okay, how much percentage of the job go to the other political party. So that itself, it became a burden on all the parties, because if ordinary business, we trying to say you want to do a merger or acquisition, what are you going to be doing there? You got to declare your liability and also come from there looking at having identified each institution liability, and you look at some of the opportunity you have and what do you do? So you can before the merger takes place. But nothing like that was done. So people were focusing more on, how do we get this to the top? Who becomes the standard bearer? Who becomes this? Mm-hmm. Even the 2020 election, it became problem that, they started dividing counties. This party take this county, this party take this county. Why, if the county does not have, membership in that county, what are you doing? So the whole arrangement started wrong and it ended bad. So I think that's why I say it's in the interest of the state. So we can all sit down now and say, look, where did we go wrong as a country? How do we fix this? And we should take away our pride and our position and title and all of these things and look at the future of the country, because where Liberia is, I would say that President Salif administration should consider it as a transitional administration, because coming from civil war, that's a government that stabilized the state. Mm-hmm. So now President Weah administration should not set a pace now for governance and administration of the state. Mm-hmm. That's how it should be. But we are seeing completely different. We are seeing a reverse. So now going back with the crisis, then political parties, opposition and ruling party not understanding how to run the state, how to manage the state, it became a problem. So I think the Supreme Court decision was very unique and useful for us. It's almost the same thing that happened in Ghana in 2016. The Ghanaians election, there was some area that they had a ballot, uncounted ballot, and it was a disputed area. And the ruling party are insisting that, oh, we won. And at the end of the day, when the opposition won, they say, look, Supreme Court made a decision, say, look, whatever comes from there, we can't take it. Because it's like you're going to put the country at war or into crisis where you
Yeah.
to go detail of investigating. So it's
Yeah.
about time that all the political parties now look at their platform and look at their own party policy and look
Right.
at what do they have to offer for the country. Those who have similarity in terms of party platform and objective, they can still collaborate. And
Right.
I tell you, in the end, during the second round, they will still need each other. So that's
That's
what we need to
perfect.
look at. Yes,
Perfect.
to build a
Perfectly
country.
said. Yeah. I mean, for me, the way I look at it, I would say I was against it. I wasn't against the collaboration initially because I thought it offered something that the country needed at the time. Something that has never been done. If you look at the history of the country, there's never been a successful collaboration that has succeeded. However, I think the way they went about it, which I think we've all been talking about, is it was. I'm sorry to say, I don't know who the lawyers in it who drafted that report, but it wasn't. I think Larry alluded to that. It wasn't definite in terms of outlining. This is what we're going to do at each stages of the process. It didn't outline that. That's why it gave people. It was vague. So it gave people the ability to undermine certain clauses in there, right? And however, into this whole process, the court process, the document actually the case was about alteration, right? It went to court because it was altered. All right. Now, given the ruling yesterday, the Solicitor General said because they dropped the case because of a clause in there that barred people from exiting, and because when they exit, they cannot contest. So I was confused. Are you dropping it because the case went to court? The document was brought in the trial for something else, but on your ruling, you say you're dropping it for something completely different, and they did not mention anything about the finger and the temperament of the document in terms of as the reason why they're dropping the case. Instead, it ended up being we're dropping it because there's a clause in there that bar people from contesting election, a party from contesting election in certain area once they exit, which I thought was puzzled, right? There was a journalist who kept asking that same question, but he kept dodging it. And no, one thing that I saw on all the social media, whether celebration or attacks, everybody kept missing that point. Hey, this case was brought into court because you accuse somebody of tampering with it, alteration. Hey, they inserted certain things in there, but now you're dropping the case because of a clause in there. But you kept dodging the question as to the reason why the case was actually brought to the Supreme Court. First of all, so that
Yeah.
was my contention there. So I thought it was confusing. However, I think as everybody thought, this was the right decision. This is the right decision. I think it's better for everybody to show their strength and then going on to the runoff. If I need to get beyond Larry, I will get beyond Larry. If I need to get beyond Dehpue, I will support Dehpue and have a one focus in making this government a one party. I mean a one term party. But that's my take on that.
No, I think the Solicitor General was dropping it because, contract, all contracts need certain elements, right? The person has to be of legal age, legal consent. They have to be
Right.
of sound mind. You cannot have a contract that violates a law. So if the contract is missing some of those elements, in this case, this particular contract violated a law. So that essentially makes the contract void. It's unenforceable. So he cannot prosecute someone for a contract that is void, meaning it's like it doesn't exist because it was never a contract. So I think that was the argument that he was taking.
I have a question though. I have a
Yeah.
question. Let me inject that question for you and Dehpue. Does that because that it was open, it was brought in open. It was because that contract was void based on that clause in there. Does that void the party who the senators who got elected on that document?
The contract doesn't, and this is something that I saw someone ask a similar question.
Hmm.
A contract, the contract by itself has no bearing on the election. The people who are being elected. The people who are being elected, what has bearing is the votes, the people who's voting for them. If you're saying if you're saying the people who are voting tampered with the vote, that has a direct bearing on the election itself. So, being part of a voided or avoidable contract where someone gets elected, it's really inconsequential, because the contract is not the reason why the people got elected. They got elected because somebody voted for them. If you're saying the voters were tampered with, then that's another story. Yeah.
Okay. Dehpue. Okay. So now let's go to the cross of our discussion today. Now, pretty much right now, everything is all square at the table, all fair game, as we can call it right now, in terms of from the opposition end. What do we think is what do we think is most important to the everyday Liberian? What do we think these parties should now be focusing on? I will put it this way. If you, Larry, or Dehpue were a candidate in this race and you were part of the CPP, and we just know that it got dissolved, what will your strategy be right now in terms of how do you turn to make yourself stand out or make yourself the cream of the crop of the opposition party?
This hypothetical question. Here's where I see it. Realistically, what is happening? The political parties need to now win the minds of the Liberian people. When people are in a very desperate situation, sometimes they make decisions, and out of patience, they take action that can lead to crisis. Where it is now, I would be, if I were in the position to, as a leader of any of the political parties, the first thing that there is to know what the common people are feeling and what we think is important, what is to their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a bread and butter issue. How many, look at the economy first and say, is it functioning well?
Mm-hmm.
Bad economy lead to bad politics.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes if you got bad politics and you got good economy, the country remains stable. But where you got bad politics and characterized by bad economy, forget about it. You get it off. In fact, you should expect instability immediately. So what is important now is to think about what will be the economic strategy, some of the information that are necessary to say this is how we jumpstart the economy. Looking at the electricity, looking at the food production, and looking at the road network, and these are things that supposed to help develop the livelihood of the people is what you need to be addressing first. Now, one of the things that right now that many people are also concerned about is the issue of security.
Mm-hmm.
And that is getting very much alarming. Community leaders, like my community in Dwazon, you see, for the first time, you got armed robbery going, community leader posting people with cutlasses attacking people at night, and this is you address the issue of security. And once you do that, you are kind of giving the people hope that indeed there are leaders around, there are people around who want to help reform the country. And one of the things that there is that we have to fight hard to ensure that we are not treading on the same path that the past government went through that led to civil war. We need to be very open, inclusive, reconciliation. Corruption part is the number one. Anyone who takes over from this administration who got elected 2023, priority should be how to retrieve and how to get the Liberian people money back. Because you see that it has become very glaring that you got high revenue numbers, but you see constraints and deficit in the system. So something is wrong somewhere. That big number coming up, but less activity going on. So obviously, these are the 4 things I would prioritize. So for me, I will look at that.
Dehpue, Larry, I want to frame this question differently. Maybe I think I may have given a hypothetical version to Dehpue, and I think he called me out on that. So, given the situation where we are, how do you think you would assess this economy to hone your message? How would you assess this economy and then hone your message towards that and do exactly what Depu said to win the mind? Because that's your message will be able to win the minds of the people. So how do you hone your how do you assess the economy, hone the message, and then use that message to win the mind of Liberian people?
I think your question kind of ties into what Hashim Fambula is saying when he's asking, we Liberians, we should be voting. He's saying, Liberians, why are we voting President George Weah for the second term? And what changes have he done in our life for the past 4 years he's been in power? That's essentially the question, people should be, do we go with the status quo? Do we go with, or should we look for change? Mm-hmm. And I like the thing that Elder James is saying. He's saying, no, the CPP still remains intact. And I think we will touch on that as well. And Bertha Stewart is asking the question, so why is NEC didn't say anything? And I think that question is in reference to your question asking about the contract and people being elected under that contract or the CPP framework, so touching that. But in terms of the economy is crap, right? We have stagflation. We have high unemployment, rising inflation. In 2018, the economy from 2017, the total production in the country fell in 2018. It fell further in 2019. It fell again in 2020. It's only in 2021 that they're saying it grew by a little over 3%. But if you take the growth in 3%, it still hasn't even met up to where it was when these guys came in 2018. They're not even there right now. So the economy by itself, and the reason why it's so important to people is because if the economy is doing well, that means people are getting jobs. People are going to the market and buying. There's a high probability you will have agriculture doing a little bit better in the country. So we kind of look at that. And then also what Emmanuel Jackson is saying, which is so critical. He's saying the country doesn't have any ratings. For a country there's no ratings from I think he's talking about the big three. That is so important because if you don't have, the countries in ECOWAS, I think only maybe 4 or 5 actually have ratings. People don't understand why that is so important. Because right now, these guys, they've been trying to do their road network. When they first made the attempt, where did they go? They went with the Eton thing, right? A fake company up in Singapore. Then connected with a guy from Burkina Faso who owns a construction company. And he was trying to raise this money to get a huge chunk of that contract.
Yeah.
But if they had credit rating like Ghana raised over $1 billion. They could have just gone to the capital markets and raised that money. But they don't understand how that is done. They don't have credit ratings. They're not even pursuing to get credit ratings. So, in terms of what has President Weah done, apart from putting his name on pretty much everything in the country, I would like, someone who support President Weah to post some of his accomplishments in here so we can read it. Please post it so we can measure that in terms of development, in terms of benefit to the people overall, right? I don't see what they have actually done over the past 4 years. Some people will say, free WAG fees. How do you measure that free WAG fees? Is that, so you pay free WAG fees, they go to college, they graduate from college, no jobs. What does that get you? So, people need to kind of look at these things holistically. Don't just look at it, okay, he paid these fees, or he said free tuition at University of Liberia. Free tuition, great. But there are parts of the university that's leaking. The university doesn't have a fitting library. There's no real internet connection at the university. We've seen situations where the university is deplorable. You don't have very good free education, but not quality education. So people need to be able to measure this thing. They can talk about the 14 military hospital. What good is that? We have 177 hospitals and clinics in Liberia. What good is that when you don't have doctors?
Yeah.
You don't have the medicine. You don't have the doctors. So please, President Weah did great. Absolutely. Post it over here so we can discuss it. But I think, for me, I don't think he's done enough to win a second term. That's just my take, my opinion. And you're free to agree or disagree with me on that. For Elder James, CPP, you see, the CPP framework, I don't know if they had a stipulation in there that if one party leaves or two parties were to leave, that the whole CPP dissolves, right? So they can call it something else, but I'm not sure if they're going to call it CPP. So tell me otherwise.
Dehpue, yes, I have a great. Dehpue, I have another question for you. You can do maybe a follow up to what if you have anything to add to what Professor Larry said, you can do that. But after that, I want you to maybe take a stab at this question. I know that's something that's very important to you. You mentioned something earlier that President Salif administration was a transition, right? Because we had just come out of war, right? I agree with you on that. What that means is that we have this gap in human capital development, right? What do you think should have been, either President Weah or any of this opposition priority in terms of how to look at the education right now to, develop the human capital that we need to make sure we are on a path to compete regionally and globally?
Very good question. The reason why I said it, many people who worked in the past administration, especially those of us who were technicians, there are a lot of assessment done by external consultant, and later on, some of us went in as local to work along with them. One thing that I'll tell you clearly that President Salif missed out on was that when there was a capacity assessment made and by the UNDP and there was a capacity strategy, 10-year capacity strategy to see, first of all, how do we fill the gap? That should have been the priority. Of course, the government did well to send some people abroad, but the strategy was not fully implemented because it ended 10 years from 2010 to 2020. To see where we have the human capacity gap. Like, for example, at the time we were doing it, the entire country had like 192 doctors. So when you look at doctor to patient ratio, we have almost 55,000. So you can, I don't care how effective a doctor is, you cannot contain such a population. If you look at mining or engineers, you see limited number of engineers in the country. So that was a very good assessment. So the next thing was to follow a pattern and say, okay, how do we do it? The good news is that the enrollment at medical doctorate was very low. They had to provide capacity, give assistance to the student, and increase the enrollment. And at this time, we have more young doctors in the country. That's from the health side. But capacity constraint in the country is still a serious gap. So that's why I said it was transition. So we needed to have built up on it. The next thing was to have a vision to say, where do we go from here? And the country came up, by Professor Sa from Fisher Institute, South Africa. They did a very good assessment and projected, look, what are some of the problems? One of the things that the problem that there is that there's no inclusion. And that itself is still a cardinal issue in terms of the stability of Liberia. So wherever you see a government, political party should be very much inclusive. Ensure that the issue of tribal, regional, or the religious thing, we need people or political parties that will be more inclusive. Women, youth involvement in everything they do. So you look at what is happening now with President Weah, is that it's a total deviation. And the expectation of Liberian people, you have many young people, even though people say he's a youthful president, he's an old man, but you have many young people with him. It's a youthful CDC have been the aspiration of the young people. But in the end, it became a political party or a ruling party that exclude the same young people from participation.
Mm,
And now, even the utilization of skilled labor in the system started excluding and using partisans.
mm,
That is there where now we're seeing that, okay, we are now deviating, we're going backward. So at least, even though there were so much capacity building and the few manpower that were trained, they were all thrown out and they are all out. How do you really work effectively in the public sector before we talk about private sector? Even though
mm.
the civil society or NGO sector try to incorporate some of them, the reality there is that if the state, the public sector, which is as a higher employer, is not effective enough to deliver on these goods and services and provide goods and services, private sector will not become functional because it will be difficult. So these are things that we need to be looking at. So the issue of capacity development should have been prioritized by this government. And the next thing that I expected us to be very careful with is that the war is over, but the issue of justice, I don't care how we throw this thing out. Wherever we carry it, we'll say, come back to our doorpost. We need to stress that and carry out. Because if not, people are still grieving, people are still, many people are angry, and nothing is done. If you don't want to have a court, but you should have the Panama Hall that talk about people should come and express themselves and say something and reconcile. Just implement these things. And I'm always wondering, but President Weah was appointed as a reconciliation man. He was in charge. Why didn't you drive this thing when you take over as a president? Make it a priority. It's
You
still
mean the
outstanding.
reconciliation report, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
reconciliation report. So TRC
right.
report.
The
So you
TLC.
need to, these are things that we need to always think about because many people thinking, okay, let's throw it away. Throwing it away is one thing, but what brought us to where we were or what caused the war is still persist.
Right.
So you need to really solve, you need to solve some of these problems. So let me not go off completely. I'll stop right here and give, I know Larry, Larry is
No,
listening.
no, but you see, Dehpue is right because when there was a survey done, the issues that led to the war, they're starting to happen again. Some of the issues that led to the war was corruption, tribalism,
Yes.
inequality.
Yeah.
Liberia has an economy that works against Liberians because we're not supposed to be spectators in the economy, but we're not even in the stadium, right? Because the economy is actually controlled by foreigners. Liberia doesn't have equal opportunity right now to participate in it. So all those elements, Dehpue, you're absolutely correct. All those elements, they're happening again. It's happening again. So, and we have to deal with that stuff. We have to deal with the equity. The crazy thing, what Dehpue said, the whole issue of capacity, back in the 60s when the IMF, the World Bank sent a team over to Liberia and it did that whole study where they eventually Crowler and the guys came out and say, hey, you had growth without development. The solution was they put money into Liberia to build the capacity. This was in the 60s. And here we are, 2022, still talking about building capacity. There's something actually wrong with what's going on in Liberia. I don't know if people ever heard of this. Have you guys heard of something called poverty trap? It was interesting. I told my students to write a paper in terms of looking at the developed nations, which country they thought had income inequality. And one kid, he was spot on. He was surprised that the U.S. has such high level of income inequality, but then he also raised the issue of poverty traps. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time, and I was shocked to hear a student actually discuss poverty trap, right? One of the poverty traps we have in Liberia is poor governance, bad governance. Nelson Mandela came out, he said this years ago, he said, Africa suffers from a leadership crisis is what we have. Some can argue that elections are popularity contest, and George Weah was popular, he got elected, but they didn't have a plan. They did not have a plan. And they say if you go into something without a plan, you pretty much planning to fail.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to add to what you mentioned something going back in the 60s. So that growth without development plan. When I read that thing, It was 8 years in a row. Supposedly, the Liberian economy was the second highest growing economy in the world. 8 years in a row. That's what led those people, some of them, actually a group from University of Chicago. They went there to study the Liberian economy. Hey, why is this little country doing so well? And they concluded that exactly what you just said. Hey, this country is not really doing well based on production. It's actually off of aid. They're just doing well off of aid. But given that
Yeah, yeah.
assessment that we've had in the 60s, which I think led to that book being written, Growth Without Development, or that discussion, it should have been a check imbalance, a kick in the head. Say, okay, maybe we got over our head here at some point, and this is what we should have done. But I agree with you. That's when the assessment should have been done to say, hey, maybe we need to change course. But since then, we have
2022.
never 2022, and we're still in this, talking about it.
Yeah, but you see the question here by Agatha Shirley, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly. She's asking, why always the World Bank? Because I mentioned the World Bank in the 60s, right? Why always the World Bank? Let me explain why always the World Bank. And the World Bank, when it first came out, they were actually called IBRD. On the street, we call them IBERD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Let me tell you why always the World Bank. It goes back to what Emmanuel Jackson mentioned. Emmanuel Jackson mentioned that we don't have a credit rating. Because we don't have a credit rating, every country raises money for development. The United States government raises billions each year by issuing US Treasury securities. That's how they raise their money. We don't have that kind of monetary policy in Liberia to do that. So the only person who can lend us money is the World Bank. That's why we always go to the World Bank, because we don't have a credit rating. We either go to the World Bank, we go to the African Development Bank. We can also sometimes, it's rare that we also use the IMF. These banks are referred to as supranational banks, right? They're actually set up by the countries themselves. So we go to the World Bank because we don't have a credit rating. What Liberia should have done is focus on getting your credit rating. Call the people at Dun & Bradstreet, at Moody's Investor Services, at Fitch. Let them come in and try to get your credit rating. Why? So you can issue debt, sovereign debt, raise money to build your coastal highway. So no one is willing to lend Liberia money. So why? We go to the World Bank, and the World Bank gives us grants and loans. The money is not free. The president said that in his annual message. Oh, we did great work. The World Bank gave us free money, 23 million. It is not free. There's somebody lying to him.
He's pitching that message to his audience, the people that follow him, because none of them understand these things. So
yeah, they don't understand. It's not free. The World Bank gets that money because they issue something called special drawing rights. That special drawing rights essentially is like I gave Dehpue a credit card, and I said, Dehpue, you can get cash from 5 countries, right? You can either go get the Chinese renminbi, the Japanese yen, the British pound sterling, the euro, or the US dollar, right? So Dehpue decide, okay, I want to get the US dollar. So then what happens is the US would lend them that money. It's a loan. Somebody lying to the president. It's a loan. I got that. We go to the World Bank because we don't have a credit rating. That's what it is. And that's the only person who will lend us money.
Okay, let's just, in addition to what Larry talking about poverty trap. In the first place, if you look at the World Economic Situation Report for 2022 that came up, it's clearly stated there that the COVID-19 and the pre-existing condition, the global poverty condition, about 85 million people, more than 85 million people actually went into poverty trap and have extreme poverty. And in the next few years or a decade from now, the number will increase. Extreme poverty number will increase. If you look at the poverty line in terms of global rating, Liberia is among the poorest. So instead of thinking that, okay, these guys, why would go to World Bank? Because they are playing with the numbers, they know the situation, look at situation analysis. So before you solve problem, you need to first of all identify the problem before you start solving it. So we found ourselves in a situation where we are the poorest. Notwithstanding, we have natural resources. And one of the things that there is that all the study had pointed that we focus most of our resources are from extractive industry. So what sector can we really utilize to ensure that there's a fair distribution, there will be impact on the economy, to build. In terms of manufacturing, how are we doing it? Nobody is paying attention to that. So there are some few data in recent time we play with. Manufacturing, shows some good strength and good opportunity for growth in the economy. So these are areas that we need to focus on instead of looking at, okay, money. We have it boomed the economy in terms of GDP, but it created less job.
Yep.
There's no opportunity for you to have value chain to talk about other services that have to be carried out by the mining company. They're just extracting ore in the own street. They're extracting the gold and going with it. So there's no processing going on in the country. So we can't rely on that as a growth pole. No, we need to change that. And back to the question that I don't know, it's a comment that you talk about. Why are we going to World Bank?
Yeah.
Poor country like us, you cannot function on your own. You need to depend on your neighbor. In the first place, you need to depend on other countries that have the resources. You go to them. You build your capacity from what they have. You borrow from them. And one thing that Liberians are not really used to, it, we need all of our economic sensitivity we need to have is that our ability to use other people's money to work for us.
Mm. Say
You
that
are
again, please.
ability. Oh yes, you
No,
are
say
ability
that
to
again.
use. You are
Say that
ability
again, please.
to use other people's money to that's it. So always people think, oh, I need to have cash to do. No, it's not possible. Liberia is cash economy at this time in digital economy, people moving. No, we should put stop to that. Build ourselves up and see how best we can improve our credit rating, as Larry said, to help us, to help the economy. There are many productive young people, a lot of strong entrepreneur investor in the country, but they cannot move anywhere because the place is just trapped. And as I mentioned on the show before, one of the challenges we have is I'm still thinking about is that the the issue of the Lebanese economy being broken down, and our economy is in the hands of the Lebanese. We have to look at this. I'm serious. I'm serious.
Yeah,
I
the
agree
whole
with you. That
the
is
whole
the
rice,
topic
the
for
whole
itself.
the rice and all that stuff. In 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 2013, Dehpue, in 2013, Madame Sirleaf, and this was right before Ebola hit. In 2013, Madame Sirleaf was over in Europe on one of her extravagant trips, and she said one of the greatest risks against Liberia was the number of unemployed youth. The
Mhm.
number of unemployed young people in that country creates such a it's a threat to that country, because right now you have um, conflict entrepreneurs, people who are paying young people to go out in the street and protest, people who are paying young people to get on social media and just kind of talk for them, even though they're doing something completely illegal, completely wrong. So you have those conflict entrepreneurs right now doing well in the country. It's nonsense.
Say
So,
political
oh,
entrepreneur.
my
You
man
have
answer
more
was yeah.
political
Okay, answer.
entrepreneur.
Huh?
Liberia have more political entrepreneur than economic entrepreneurs.
And
The
that
They
is
are
plenty.
very creative.
that is the next question that I wanted to ask pose to you guys. And I think you guys may have touched on it in bits and pieces. But the question in its entirety is, why is it that no president has ever gotten the economy right? No president. The closest that I thought, someone could have come close to, who could have gotten it right, was the President Salif. And the reason why I put that, give her that, too much hope in that, is because of her experience, right? She's worked in the World Bank. She's at some point worked at Citibank. You would think this is somebody who understands the economy, the importance of entrepreneurship and how that leads to creating jobs. But besides her, we can go back into the history of the country, and I think there was another guy. I think was it Todman or Tarbert, one of those people with his open door policy. That was the closest. But ever since then, ever since then, nobody has gotten this country they have to be come in this country. I mean, the presidency, take the presidency to say, I really understand the economy, and this is how I'm going to transform it, not for this select group of people anymore, but that it will work for everybody. Why do you think we've every president has neglected the economy in that way? And they come in, they just wing it. They just wing it. Why do you think is that? Is there something on the citizenry, or is it something fundamentally about the way our system is, or is it just we don't have presidents who understand that?
Go ahead, Dehpue.
It's loaded. I know it's a loaded question.
Uh, Friendly speaking, I always giving President Tolman and Tolbert the credit
Hmm.
from economic perspective.
Hmm.
If you look at it, I think you will see that economic history is a economic nationalist. These two leaders, I will consider them economic nationalists because
Yes.
in as much as Todman administration, we can't determine what was the capacity level, how many people were educated during his tenure. He led for 27 years. That's the only part everybody said 27 years. But there are a couple of things that people have not acknowledged. Most of the public infrastructure you see around, these were all projects, including the executive mansion, are projects from President Todman.
Hmm.
The Temple of Justice, the Capitol building, and all these things. And besides that, he went ahead with road infrastructure. We're talking about Bikini Highway. Then he started what we call unification, even though people felt that he was more a dictator and he got a special PRO, foreign relation officers everywhere. The reality there was that he was going to the hinterland, meeting people, and brought about inclusion. Selected those who were his loyalists, but at least there was diversity in his government. Now, President Tolbert was purely focusing on the era from Todman in terms of how to widen, the possibility, the opportunity, how to broaden it among Liberians himself. And so he came focusing more on the economy. And while he was focusing more on the economy, he forgot about the politics. So that is what really, really helped. I mean, that what victimized Tolbert.
Hmm.
Tolbert was more focusing on both politics and economics. But he prioritized the politics more than the economy, so he succeeded for 27 years. So Tolbert came on board and felt that, look, with all of these opportunities, we need to give opportunity. So he was focusing more from mat to mattress and how to improve the living standard. He set up a cooperative across the country so that farmers will have income and all of these things he set up. But because he didn't go too much into politics, he got victimized. So in reality, what is very much important now is that we can look at the historical data and say, look, how do we improve on it? So people who are vying, like we said, the CPP is no longer there. Political parties. How do you look at somebody historical data? Liberia, on October, fishery was one of the major priority, and
Yes.
we were exporting processed fish, and where we are today. So we cannot be net importers of almost everything that we own.
Whatsoever.
It's frustrating. We need to diversify our economy and to see how best we can focus on the job creation in the economy,
Right.
manufacturing, fishery, service sector. These are places that we need to focus on to bring more jobs in the economy.
Larry, say I want to pose the same question to you. Why do you think we have not no president has gotten this thing right in terms of the economy? And I think it you might have Depu may have alluded to that. It's kind of like what he said, the balancing act. So I think he said Tarbert was focused on the economy, but because of that, he neglected the political aspect of it. So maybe this could be a balancing act to be able to say, I'm balancing the economy, but at the same time, still focusing on gaining more political capital in doing that as well. And I think he may have neglected some of that. But from a historical standpoint and what you have seen thus far where we are in 2022, why do you think we have no president has gotten this thing right to the point where we are right now? We're in an abyss, and I keep telling people, give this, God forbid, we give this president another 6 years, we're gonna have like a full. We're in a full fail state right now. You give this guy another 6 years, we're gonna fail. We're gonna have a real fail state. But why do you think no president has gotten the economy right?
The chief strategist for Bill Clinton, James Carville, he said it years ago. He said it's all about the economy, stupid.
Mhm.
My brother Dwalu, he's laid out the answer right there in his post. The reason why people really haven't done this in the economy is because we just don't have the technocrats to do that. When you're sick, you go to the hospital. Do you ask for a doctor, or do you ask for do you ask for a specialist, or do you ask for a witch doctor? You want somebody who is a specialist, right? You want to see someone who's a specialist who's been doing this stuff day in and day out, who doesn't just have the theoretical knowledge, who has the practical knowledge. If I were to ask you, Gabriel, I'm going to take you to the edge of the forest, a tropical rainforest. Do you want a Harvard graduate with a biology degree, or you want a guy who's been living in that forest for his family being there for 4 or 5 generations? He has practical experience. Take the guy. He has practical experience living and working in that jungle. This guy only seen pictures in book in a classroom. So we're missing the technocrats to actually come in and do that stuff. And I think that's one of the big what's missing. There's a whole combination of another thing too, is this whole concept of Dutch disease, right? Because we have so many, we're having abundance of resources. People don't think that it's even necessary to diversify the economy. Because no matter what happened, you have diamonds, you have gold, you have iron ore, you have lump, you have timber, you have all that stuff that would still bring in money. If we didn't have all of those natural resources, the people would run these guys out of power.
Yeah.
All we're doing right now, going back to an earlier question, we have these resources, but we're not creating, like what Dehpue said, we're not creating the manufacturing part of it. We're only renting our resources. We are a rentier nation. We rent everything. We even rent parts of our ocean to other poor, underdeveloped countries. It's sad. I mentioned this on Costa's show the other day. AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, it gives us privileges to not paying tariffs on certain things. Who is taking advantage of it right now? 2 countries. Lesotho, a small country that sits in the middle of South Africa, 99%, 3.2 billion of the GDP comes from manufacturing. You know how they're doing it? They have attracted all of the Asian clothing manufacturers to come to Lesotho. Go ahead, go on Google, put Lesotho factories. You will see they employ thousands and thousands of women. They have a balanced economy. Thousands and thousands of women. Kenya is taking advantage of it. Because we have all of these resources, we just believe that we don't have to do anything else. We don't have to diversify our economy. We don't have to do anything else because money's still going to come in just from renting our resources. That's why we don't diversify. We don't do anything. But yeah, there's some great comments in here, and I want us to really jump in there and start mentioning.
Yeah, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We jump into that. I think maybe it will be a segue for the rest of the show.
Hi, my name is Addie Tyler from Pennsylvania, and you're watching Focus on Liberia.
All right, welcome back to Focus on Liberia. Again, our topic today, we're talking about the economic roadmap post the CPP, and I think we've talked about everything. We talked about, fighting corruption, economic. I think it's like a drum that we play every time we come on here. And we talk about the fragility, how fragile Liberia is. We even went deep into, talking about why we have not gotten this whole, experiment that we're trying called democracy right, and to make it right for everybody in the country. So I think we should go to the comment section and take comment from you, because as we said earlier from the beginning, we want to make this interactive. And again, please do have your comments comment, and hopefully we'll
definitely.
Be able to take,
And I see my sister Jackie over here. She's saying we need to build capacity to qualify for AGOA. She's absolutely correct. And it goes to what Dehpue was saying, this whole thing of capacity. Liberia is such it's a complex situation. Asset recovery. Someone mentioned asset recovery. Sani Abacha stole billions. He was hiding those things over in the island nation of Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria got in touch with the FBI and some other agencies that worked together. They were able to repatriate almost $1 billion back to Nigeria. It's not a lack of effort in trying to recover assets. You know, the Solicitor General, all those guys that came over here to the US, I met up with all these guys to discuss this stuff and try to help them. Took them to one of the largest law firms over here in the US as well. It's just a lack of willpower sometimes. It's the governance issue that Jackie mentioned in her comments as well. So it's a complex thing with Liberia, you know, and if we don't build the capacity, everyone takes advantage of Liberia, including USIT. USIT takes advantage of Liberia because what they do is they put the money out there, but they don't give the development work to Liberians where the money would stay in Liberia. They give the development work to the big 5 NGOs in the US, the FHI 360, the ABT Associates, the Tetra Tech. All of these guys get these contracts. They go in Liberia, they do the work, say they're doing capacity building, then they leave and the money comes right back.
With all the money.
It's nonsense. It's a complete fiasco.
That's what I keep saying. It's somebody who will come in and have a good grasp of that, have a good grasp of every one of those. There's a lot to juggle in terms of building a country, or especially a country as poor as ours, like ours, right? Somebody who will come in and have a good fundamental grasp of those things, you know, like, you know, the developmental part of it, the economy as an entirety, you know, expanding, looking at us for the next 10, 20, 40, 50 years, 100 years. How do we want to be? You know, it's a lot to juggle. So it's so unfortunate that we have not had somebody who would come in and lay out a plan and then execute those plan, or even that even if they don't accomplish it, the next person can come in and say, this is so great that I want to take it and continue with it. You know, that's the disease that we're fighting here. But let's get to the comments, and then I want to hear your feedback on some of these comments. So I want to start with the one with Dualu here, where he said natural resources should not be touched until we have built institution to guide extractive sector, reclose the mines in Liberia, all of them. I think he wrote an article that he's referring to. All right, and then we have another one here from, I think you talked about this one earlier, Agata Shelley. Since 1847 up to present, World Bank 25 president now have World Bank's 25 presidents now, 25 president now, but one to blame, but one to blame one president. Not good. You guys help me here. Maybe I'm reading this wrong.
I think she's trying to say that we're blaming we are something like that. I'm just guessing.
Right.
But it's not just we are. It's not we are. It's the previous administration before that. So it's not just him.
Yeah. And I want to go to
Dehpue think about it.
Dehpue, what do you think about that before I go to Professor Sayed's? You're muted. You're muted, Dehpue.
I say in my analysis, I started from top man. I didn't say one person. The only thing there is that it's almost like you reach a point where you went into war and everything crumbled. You have a pickup point, and that administration, Madam said, administration was a tipping point for Liberia to grow. Now you can't pick up the moment you pick up for development, then we find ourselves again sloping down. So that's what I said. So we're not just blaming he alone, but he has to take lead and say, where did I meet this? Instead of it going backwards, you go forward.
Okay. Perfect. All right. We have this one is Prof is asking, and I think this is a statement. Xenophobic pen. I think definitely they're referring to you with that Lebanese comment. That's Lebanese comment.
let me address this issue.
Okay,
I know
take 30 seconds to go. I have 1 minute
to
to
save
go.
xenophobia, yeah, whatever way you want to describe it, one thing I can tell you clearly is that no economy around the world grow without the citizens or the indigenous. If you don't control that, you will definitely not going to control the economy. So it's not only Lebanese, but what I've mentioned about Lebanon is that a lot of them currently control huge investment, and they always repatriate their funds home. And with the situation they face right now, let's see what will be their response and their reaction. So for now, it's in our interest. Nothing happening. Might have high opportunity to keep it stuck in Liberia. But things stabilize, you'll see what's going to happen. But we need to encourage Liberians to take ownership of their economy.
And there's another follow-up here from Keita. He said, Dehpue, all that can be accomplished when he said all of that can be accomplished when the rule of law is upheld.
Yes. And we said justice.
Upheld.
Yes,
All right.
it's true.
And Agata's busy. Oh. She said, sorry, I wanted to say, okay, so she corrected that statement. I felt like I was reading like a fifth grader. She said, sorry, I wanted to say, want to blame one person. That you're right, one person. You are right, Larry. Prof is busy today. She said we should read Animal Farm. I think that sounds like a good book. It's the issues is good governance. So I guess Animal Farm is a good book on good governance. So here's another one from Dehpue. I mean, not Dehpue, Dualu. Said natural resources should be okay. I think we saw this again. Yeah. How did he post that again? This one is from Paul. Paul Johnson said they are not blaming one person, but expanding on how this one person incompetent is so worse, and he is misleading the public down the drain. That I think we couldn't have said that better, but I'll let you guys comment on it if you want to. No comment. Okay. Augustus here again. He said my brother Charles Taylor Taylor ran a government without international help. Why these government and Ellen government are crying for help? Please help me. Is that true though? Did he really run a country without any international help?
Nah, that's not
I
true.
don't. No,
That's
yeah,
not true.
I didn't think so.
Liberia relies heavily on foreign aid. Even Charles
Okay,
Taylor relied on foreign aid.
there's another comment here from Sharif. She said, is it he or she said, who gave the Lebanese the opportunity to control our economy? That is, I think that is a question for all of us. Lamin Famule say any smart government will understand the high level of unemployed youth is a security threat to any nation.
I mean,
Dualu,
on that thing, Lamin just said, think about it. Who
right?
in Liberia will have a very good, decent job, will leave their job to go protest every day?
Mm,
It's rare that that's going to happen. You know,
mhm.
I mean, they can protest about other things, but it wouldn't be about the economy or a lack of jobs if they have jobs. So
Mhm. We'll have Dualu again. Two reasons why no one has fixed the economy: capable citizen absence, and or involvement, and lack of law enforcement. And I think this one thing is it keep coming up and up and up. In terms of the rule of law. Gata again. Gata, thank you for this comment. You're very active today. That's bravo to you. No, Dehpue, nothing they did right. Nothing they did right. Poor management to the country. Huh. Nothing they did right. Poor management to the country. I think she meant they didn't do anything right. Uh, Anderson Wallow, foreign business people are in every country in Africa, and the other African countries have rules and regulations, but nothing works in our country. I think that goes to the comment about the the Lebanese. But I think you rightly answered that question. It's not about, we don't just want to point our finger to say the Lebanese. It's just the way the economy is structured that is not benefiting everybody. It's just very few people, certain group of people. And I think this is what this guy is referring to here. Um, we have Keita again. He said we are in danger when we have overly ambitious people who with less opportunity. Hmm. Any comment on that? No? No. Okay. And we have Dualo again. Two reasons. Okay, I think we saw this coming. Man, keep posting the question. Maybe posting from phone and laptop. Okay. So what happened to the learn people and our role connectivity is backward as well as agriculture? What happened to the learn people and our, okay, I think she maybe educated people. And maybe somebody correct me here. Maybe I'm
Yeah, that's what you're referring to. Let me read one comment here from Archie Moore. He keeps posting the same thing. So let me just put it out there real quick. He said, please help me out here, gentlemen. Focus on Liberia interviewed several gentlemen in Liberia. They were asked, who will you be voting for? Yeah, there it is.
all right.
95% said we are. Why? Because of his development. These are gentlemen without jobs. How can you guys square their rationales?
Let's go. I think that's a great one. Let's tackle that. What do you make of that? I saw that that live interview to that Theo did at that some intellectual place, the Freeport intellectual hall they call it.
Well, my question to Archie Moore would be, can he name three of the developments that Josh Weah did?
Mm.
Okay, he can just post it over here. Just three developments that Josh Weah did, and we can talk about it. Because let me just leave it like that. Let me just post three. We can probably be reading some other comments until he
I
posts
will
this.
follow up on that as well to say the people that are making those statements, where are they making those statements from?
Let me say this.
Go
Can
ahead.
I come in?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sometimes I tell people, yes, you can do your survey or radio call and whatever you expect to get, and you get a result. But when it comes to human face development, which is now the strategy that the whole global world go on, is you look at the livelihood of the people, their daily movement.
Hmm.
So you look at it to determine.
Hmm.
The school dropout rate in the country has increased. And when you talk about vaccine is not even so available. Maternal mortality rate, almost everything in terms of social indicators that any country will improve are all declining. So if someone is trying to defend, it's not that uh, somebody decided to just say or to make up a story, but we are having it bad because the politics is bad. So the economy is bad and it's going worse. So people they play the politics, and politically someone can win and the country cannot function well. And it's not good. Period.
Hmm.
That's why I make it a fragile state.
Yeah. So I will add to that as well. I don't. This is Archie Moore. Um, it may be the most brutal thing I've ever said. The people that were interviewing, that were choosing, that said they would elect President George Weah, look at the economic status that they're in. Where were they making those recommendations from? At a what is it? Intellectual hall. Look at the intellectual hall from which they were making those assertions, right? Not only that, look around the intellectual hall from which they were making those assertions. Again, I say this to say that these are people that just make decision, that just make or just choose with no consequence or impact or thought as to how the decision that they're making will impact them in the future, right? These are people without jobs. That's what I'm saying. They're in the in an intellectual hall, supposedly intellectual hall. Sometimes we kind of put names on it. It's just a place to sit around and talk, right? No job. They're not working. It's not even to say, hey, we're on lunch break and this guy came in here to ask her this question. No, that wasn't the case. So for that, I don't think I have to say anything else. I will rest my case on that.
So let's continue.
Yeah. All right. So this another. I think we answered that question. That's the same question we answer here. I have one here, man. Dehpue, you have to answer this one. I think this is from you. From Prof. Prof keep coming at you, my man. She says Zambia have Turks, right? Greeks, Lebanese, and other foreigners. The issue is what rules does Liberia have in place to regulate business community? How can Liberians compete with an interest rate of 20%? She is who I would like to add on that, especially the last sentence. But do you have anything to add to that? Do you want to say to that?
I think the issue of business regulation and maybe many people are having, they are not understanding my concern about the Lebanon situation. If they have read what's happening in Lebanon
Hmm.
and see the situation we find ourselves in Liberia, where there's
Hmm.
no regulation, uh, you see that there's intense danger with the economy.
Hmm.
So the best opportunity that we have is our interaction with the rest of the world, and that itself is what is helping us right now. But
Hmm.
we can look at diversify our economy and also have foreigner. We're not saying they shouldn't have foreigner in the economy.
Hmm.
You can still be there, but you want to make sure that there are opportunities to the indigenous that can have access to job, access. How many of these companies or businesses that are owned by these people have franchises? Where do they have franchise or any Liberian to participate in it?
Hmm.
It's owned by them and everything
Yeah.
that they don't have citizenship, and that means it's not our wealth. So why people are taking this question very seriously? So let them go do more research about Lebanon, what's happening there.
I
So
wanted to add. I want to add to the last question, the
how
last
Liberians can
sentence.
compute in terms of the interest rate? That's a very good concern.
Right.
The first thing we need to look at, that's why I said regulation is a challenge. So financial services, financial inclusion is some of the problem that we need to address to tackle right now. And I can tell you that if the commercial banks are giving loan at an interest rate of 20%, 24 month, 12-month, period, it's not possible that whatever business you do, you're able to make the profit and come back and pay off the loan. So these are some of the reasons why we need to work on our financial services and financial inclusion. And central bank should be at the forefront to see how best they can improve it. Where we have a country that is a growing economy, you can give loan at high interest rate and short term. So you are just definitely killing the business owner and killing the business, killing the economy. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree with the concern raised by the viewer.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a comment on the last sentence then, because this is something I when I go to library, those are some of the things I look into. I survey usually the banks, small business owners, the market women specifically. Specifically, there are some markets that are built and they are controlled by one person who the tables. All those people go from that person who control the market and they borrow loan from that person. There was an individual, actually there was several, who wanted to borrow $6,000 from one of the banks. I don't want to mention their name, right? 6,000, 12 months. I had to tell them that was a bad deal. Stay out of it. Don't even touch it. They were borrowing 6,000. They were paying in 12 months. They're supposed to pay it back in 12 months. The total payment 12 months, it's supposed to be $10,400, right? You borrow 10,000 in 12 months, you pay back $10,400. That is 42% interest on every dollar. Now, correct, maybe my math could be wrong, but it's 42% or higher interest rate on that. $10,000, 6,000 just for borrowing 6,000. You're paying. The reason why I made that person stay out of it, you could be making profit on that business you're making. And I've seen it plenty of times. I've talked to another market woman who had a similar situation. The moment you have an issue, let's say your child gets sick, or let's say you get into an accident where you have to go to the hospital, that will put you out of business. Because now the profit you were making, you will spend that money on that profit and you will never be able to catch up paying back on that loan. It happened the same thing again 2019 when I went to Liberia. This woman was selling in one of the market in Corwell, lower Corwell. The same thing. Just one mistake, her child got sick, and that's what put her out of business. So what they do, the person who owned the business will go to assets, the market will go to either the Access Bank, the other banks out there and borrow the money, and then the market women in that market will come and borrow from her. But sometimes some of those people can't even pay back some of that money. Sometimes one mistake, or it just become what we call the hand to mouth. So I agree with Dehpue, what Dehpue was saying. There's got to be regulations. There got to be regulation. And this is something that I always talked about. There got to be regulation. Stuff like that, somebody should be able to pick up the phone. There should be a phone line at the central bank where people can report those excessive predatory kind of lending on the people. And those things should be investigated. That if the interest rate is set at 25% or 30%, regardless of how bad your credit score is or whatever we use to measure, you cannot go over that. Even they say this person is thief, if you want to lend to them, you cannot go over 30%. And if we catch people, banks or credit union or other subsidiaries or intermediaries lending at such an interest rate, you have the right and you can investigate it. You have enough evidence, you can shut them down. But we have none of that happening in the country. And this is when I mean prevalent in Liberia. This is why you see people go to borrow money. They say they're starting businesses and the business doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. And these people don't have anywhere else to get money. So this is one of the biggest problems, and that's what I wanted to add to that. But I absolutely agree with the professor here. That is a big problem. 20% is not even close to what they're charging over there. And this is robbing people, but nobody is investigating that because the central bank doesn't have control over the lending rate. The commercial banks don't do their job, and all of that trickles down to the average person. So I agree with you on that, specifically on that sentence. Yeah. All right.
One of the reasons why you have high interest rates in Liberia is because we don't have a way to vet the person's ability to repay the loan. If you look at the non-performing loans in Liberia, it's extremely high. And I can remember clearly, Madam Salif, in her I think it was the 2015 or 2016 annual message, she was trying to shame people for not paying back their loans. It's because of that risk of people not being able to vet someone. In America, you run the person's credit history. You go to Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, you pull their credit. We use their credit score as a way to measure their propensity, their ability to repay the loan. You don't have the kind of same system like that in Liberia. So lending money to people in Liberia is a little risky. That's why back in 2013, they set up something, and Emmanuel Jackson knows because I used to have this conversation with him. In 2013, they set up this collateral registry system. And this is crazy about Liberia. So Ghana first set up the collateral registry system. It worked in Ghana. They set up collateral registry system in Liberia. It doesn't work. So why is it? I mean, there's just so many hiccups in the system right now. But because we don't have a way to measure someone's credit risk, that's why. And take a look at the Central Bank of Liberia's website. Take a look at the non-performing loans. The non-performing loans is in double digits. It's extremely high. And that's a problem. So it's because of that banks trying to measure the risk, they're charging these excessive interest rates. Because interest rates is nothing more than a measure of the level of risk in that particular environment. So that's what it is. Can Liberia compete with 20% interest? Well, it's not supposed to be that way. One of the reasons too, if you have very low interest rate, it will lead to inflation, because if too many people can go and borrow money, then you have a lot of money in the economy chasing few goods. And this is what happened in the US economy when they gave all those stimulus checks. There was just a lot of money in the economy. That led to part of the inflation we're seeing. I mean, in addition to the war in Ukraine and the supply chain challenges that we're having. But they just started printing crazy money in Liberia when it came into 2018, So the economy is it's in a mess. You lower interest rate, you lower interest rates right now. You have high inflation. If you lower interest rates, it's only going to get worse because inflation is going to rise. So how do you fix it? It's a complex environment to fix. The way how to fix it in the US, they have monetary instruments to deal with that. They have ways to pull money out of the economy. No one trusts the government in Liberia that well enough to lend them money. No one really trusts the government that well. So it's probably going to be that way until the next group comes in. And is the next group right now, are they discussing their strategy?
Larry, the central bank has a treasury note.
No, they do. They have CBL bills, right? Because the IMF asked them one time to show how much it's costing them to do these CBL bills. And even they issued something recently, and I saw the finance minister trying to explain it. He really doesn't understand the concept of what an inflationary bond is, right? Inflationary bond in the US is something we call TIPS, Treasury Inflationary Protected Securities. They were issued back in the late 70s, right? They've never seen that stuff in Liberia. He was trying to explain it, but he doesn't understand the concept.
I can feel sorry for him sometimes. Really.
He doesn't understand
I
the
do.
concept,
Sometimes
right?
I really do feel so bad for him.
But I think that's the central bank team. I've been trying for central bank team to join us on this issue here to discuss the T-bill, but they have not been able to have time. I think it's due to bureaucracy.
I will reach out to the governor directly. As I said,
I think we've been. The people need approval from him, but we can have people here to come and discuss that.
Dehpue, let me tell you why the T-bills don't work. T-bills are short-term securities. Let me tell you why it doesn't work and why the IMF have been asking them to explain what it's costing the Liberian people, and they can't do it. So in the US, we have long-term notes, right? We have treasury bills. Usually it matures in less than 1 year. So for example, the government, I'm going to buy your treasury bill, right? So $10,000, I purchase your treasury bill. You're supposed to pay me interest on that money I loan you. It can be 3 months. It can even be 1 week.
1 year, right?
So why am I lending you this money just for you to turn around and pay me back that money with a higher level of interest when you got a broke economy? Where are you getting this interest from to pay back? So what the US does in terms to borrow money, they don't borrow it for 10 years, for 15 years. The long-term bond is a 30-year bond.
Yep.
They do that. We don't have that. Nobody's going to lend you money in Liberia for 5 years, considering the interest rate fluctuates. They can't do that stuff. They don't have the policy instruments. And the guy who's running the central bank, he's a compliance officer at JP Morgan. How you take a compliance officer and make them the head of your central bank, a very highly technical position?
Hey, my man, I beg you, we're trying to invite the guy on the show. Please, when he comes.
I'm sorry. I will not be here when you invite him. So, you guys can talk
trying
anyway.
to invite him on the show. I don't know if I tell you guys the story. I met him at the airport. Cool guy, we introduced ourselves, but we didn't get into trying to. But I will reach out and see if I can get him on the show. That would be nice. I really want to hear his.
I got just asking, what would 1,200 the stimulus check? What would 1,200 do for a family that would cause inflation? Well, 1,200 times millions of people. And when people go out and spend that money, it leads to inflation eventually, because you have a lot of money now injected into the economy, all that money chasing very few goods. It will lead to price hike. If all of these guys over here were all millionaires and there's a car out there worth 100,000, they will start fighting over buying that car. Eventually, I'm the car manufacturer. I will raise the price to see who would be willing to come higher. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening, Agatha.
Dehpue.
Yes, I think when we started, we're talking about how the political parties with whatever, whether it's can we call it dissolution or whatever that
Yeah,
ever happened.
you're right.
What's the future and how do we, what would be their economic policy?
Right.
And I think what is very much important is to now engage the parties and to see how best we can have the representative to come. I can tell you clearly that Liberians are politically sensitive. They listen to the political program much than the economic program. And many of the people think that I've seen people keep raising 95% of the people voting for we are yes. You can have 95% of the people voting for we are at this time, but the economy is not still on right footing. You cannot you cannot make that decision based on the poll you conducted at the radio station. I want you to simply go. Their own data tell you clearly that inflation high. The worst thing is that now the global inflation have been added to it, so it will escalate. The next thing, just recently, they themselves know what happened, the implications since the gasoline price hike came about. They are already strangulated many things. In fact, people doing carpool, many students drop from school. So it's important for us to look at the numbers. Pretty soon, we'll have the opportunity to have some numbers coming up from some institution or other thing, and we'll be playing with the numbers to let the Liberian people know where we are and how are we doing.
Hmm.
And that's what we need to be doing. I'm sorry, this is not a political discussion, but we need to give the hard facts and some of the data to speak to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you talk about the global numbers, they put think, oh, that World Bank, the IMF, so we'll be taking numbers from within the system now and be discussing it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So we have a comment here. Henry, uh, I think Henry Pass is a pass. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll just call you Henry. Liberia don't produce any. Liberia don't. Liberia doesn't produce anything. So how will you control your economy? All right.
Great question.
Yeah. And we have this one here from Emmanuel Jackson. T-bill are profitable when you have international credit rating.
Yeah, if you have a triple A credit rating, definitely it would be profitable. Because the government is borrowing the money, so yeah, you need very good credit rating for the interest rate to be low.
But anyways, Henry again. You don't you don't even grow food to feed yourself. So there is no way you can control your economy. Uh, this guys, we have Kamara. Let the government of let the government of need stop the capitalist
What he was, socialism,
cap,
communism.
capitalism
So
system that
socialism
is
doesn't
dangerous
work
to
because
our
even the
yeah.
Chinese right now, they're practicing capitalism. The best thing that ever happened to China was when Mao Zedong dropped dead. By him dying, the elites decided to move towards capitalism. That's why you see the
Mhm.
Chinese economy, it just quadrupled. Liberian economy was even better than the Chinese economy at one time. China today holds the largest amount of special drawing rights, more than the United States government. Why? Because the communist philosopher Mao Zedong dropped dead one day, and that helped China.
Yeah. So that's was those were very engaged people. I think some people were passionate about their comments, and you can tell from from how they pose the questions. Um, the question, I think Depo kind of took us back to that. The question remains, given everything we know about this country, you know, we don't have credit rating. Nobody understands the economy. We can even argue that it's controlled by a very small group of people. We have banks that have high non-performing loans. We have an economy that is, stagnant. From all indicator. Currently, we have uh, a administration in place where the people at the helm of the financial institution do not even understand what they're talking about. Sometimes when I really say I feel sorry for the guy, sometimes I really do, not out of ignorance, but out of the fact that he doesn't know, and he forces himself to come on and pretend. And for those who don't know, they think, hey, this guy is talking brilliant because he just throw economic and financial jargons out there, and to them they think that he knows what he's talking about. But in reality, you guys know that he doesn't know a jack what he's talking about. But in essence, there is a lot that is happening in this economy. And sometimes for me, I I think that goes for most of you too. We talk about these things not because we want to get into politics, but we want to, like, trust me when I say I want to be able to go to a country, enter in Liberia, land from the airport, and say, man, I'm you know I'm in a great country, man. I'm this country is booming. What else? What kind of investment do we want to look at? Do we want to look at this place? Do we want to look at this sector? Do we want to look at this sector? Nothing about politics. Government is just a conduit to create an environment that enable those things. So those are the things we're talking about. But the question that I want to ask here to as we wrap up, we know all of these things that I just highlighted. We don't understand our economy. We don't have credit rating. The economy is only working for very few. For over a century, it's been that way. Again, the question remains fundamentally as I posed it earlier. What do you think if you guys were the head of these opposition? What is your economic plan, and how do you craft that message? How do you market it to convince these people to say, I am your guy. This is why I am your guy. This is what I'm going to do. This is my technical team. This is these are the teams that I have in various places that will help me get to that get this economy to where it needs to be for everybody. How do you attack that?
Let me just go quick, Dehpue, because I have to hop into another meeting. So here's my strategy I would give if I'm coming in. Increase the amount we're investing in education.
Mhm.
I will put so much money into education because we need a critical mass of highly educated people. And Liberians, I want people who are staying in the country. You see, the problem is sometimes when we educate the people, they turn around, leave, and get high paying jobs overseas. Educate them, give the incentives so they can stay in the country.
Yeah.
Make the level playing field for boys and girls. Put so much into we see STEM all the time here in the US.
Mhm.
The whole science, technology, engineering, math concept. Put a lot of money into education. You need a critical mass of people in Liberia. Do asset recovery. It's a quick way to get some money back and set the precedent. People coming after you. If you steal money, we're going to recover asset. Do asset recovery. What we said earlier, you got to get your credit rating in place. If you don't get your credit rating in place, you cannot float a euro bond. You cannot raise money to do anything. Every country borrows money. The US borrows billions and billions of dollars each day. Even a small country like Ireland is holding one of the largest amount of US debt.
Mhm.
China, Japan, Ireland, those guys are holding a ton of US debt right now. You got to get your credit rating going. But I will focus so much on education. But besides all of that, none of this stuff works if you don't have the rule of law. No country has ever developed without the rule of law. You need that. So the governance, rule of law, they all go into the same basket. You
Right.
have to prosecute one chief, so all the people underneath
Indians.
there can fall in line. But again, great conversation. I will listen to Dehpue offline, and thanks so much to all the comments. I
Yeah.
enjoyed Jackie, Henry, Swat, Agatha was purely engaged, and thanks for your time, Gabriel and Dehpue. As always, Professor, it's always nice
Yeah.
being on this platform and having a conversation with you.
All right. Thank you. Depu, that question to you,
I
and
think
I think you might be
Larry,
more
Larry,
practical.
Larry kind of sum up almost everything. I think
Yes.
what is important for any economy to move is to look at human development that have to do with health and education. Once you tackle these two things,
Hmm.
healthy population is a productive population. Educated population more productive than any population. So what is important there? The educational system, one thing we also need to do now is to see how best we introduce critical thinking and in the business program to have some leverage of entrepreneur skill or entrepreneur ability, because many people are acquiring degree but lack the entrepreneur ability to either market their skill or
Mm,
to take risks to do businesses. And so these are things that we need to go into in terms of our educational program. So more practical, applied agriculture, applied economics, so that people would know that you have a skill and you have the knowledge and you got the educational level. The next thing, which is very much crucial, you talk about rule of law.
mhm.
It sustains the economy, it protects the interests of investors and also the citizen as well. But what is important now for Liberia is how we focus in the economy. We focus on manufacturing that will create more jobs. We focus on agriculture for food security and sustainability. You need these things clearly, that's the only way. The livelihood of the people should be a priority, that anyone who comes to power talk about agriculture, manufacturing, services. And the last thing that there in the sector is the tourism.
Mm,
Um, many African countries, in fact, Tanzania, Kenya, they raise billions of dollars annually from tourism. Gambia had now taken over in West Africa. Yeah, Ghana is doing the same thing. So what's about Liberia? So we need to make our place attractive for tourists to come in, and that depends on the rule of law, security, and protection of property that we have. So without listing all of the idea, but at least few tops we can deal with that. And for political stability, we need a leader who will be more inclusive,
mhm.
who will be people centered, that will discuss the issue and to do away with all of these sectionalism, tribal thing, favoritism. These are things that we need to get rid of. And I know that Liberia will definitely improve when you got a leader. We've been having people with position, but leader is someone who influences people to do the right thing. Thank you.
Mm. I think you and Larry did cover everything that, I believe that, you know, whether the next person in the opposition or whoever that person may be should be looking at. And one thing that you mentioned earlier is that the balancing act, because there was you give a good historical context where, one, I think
Oh
President
yes, you gotta
Buhari,
balance the act. You leave the
right,
politics, you focus on the economy. Great president Atoba got caught
right,
into the process.
right.
That was the man
You
who should have
mentioned that, and
liberated
I think,
Liberia.
yeah, and I think that is something that, this is why we have history. Sometimes the more you look into your history, the better it prepares you to lead your future. So as somebody who's coming in, you can look into that and say, hey, you study that guy, you say, hey, this is where he faulted, this is where he went wrong. This is how I think I will be able to balance it. But for me, without trying to be too long-winded, the there are maybe three things that I think I would look at. One, the economy, and I know that is broad, the rule of law, and again the human capital, which falls into the education, right? The reason why I say the economy, everything runs circles around the economy. The rule of law, if you don't have rule of law, everything falls apart. You can bring investor in if they can execute simple, business contract and go into a court of law and settle contracts in the court of in your commercial court or whatever court. Nobody's coming in. Human capital. I think this is something that is very important to you. You keep touching on that, and I agree with you on that as well. This is key to any advancement. You can have your economy, you can have your rule of law. If you're not developing your human capital, you will only compete in your country. You cannot compete regionally, and definitely you cannot compete on a global level. So for me, if I were coming in, those are the things that I'll be looking at. Now, that is from looking from the outside. But I think the good way to look at that would be able to go in the country, do a good assessment, and talk to the Liberian people and see what is important. And when I mean what is important, what do I need to do right now in the next year, 6 months, or a year or 2 years to get the economy back on track? Then after it's back on track, the wheels are spinning on that bus. Then I will now set my sight on the bigger pictures, which is to keep that, bus running, the prepared, and everything else going, which is the long-term goal, whether the 5-year goal, the 10-year goal, or the even 12-year goals, if you want to look at it, right? So for me, that's how I would look at it. And I think for um, you know, given that within there's a whole lot that is wrong with our country, I think that's how you bite the apple till you get to the seed, right?
Thank you so much.
Right. So if you don't have anything else to add, I think we should wrap up here.
Yes, I think it's good. We know that President Weah, as he's a footballer president, he
Right.
need to touch the issue of youth development,
Mm,
how best you can have opportunity for the young people. A lot of them are now getting into, unholy behavior,
mm.
drugs, armed robbery. So we need to see how best to provide opportunity for them, so they can focus on how to generate income instead of getting to go hunt people down for their income. So thank you. Have a
Yeah.
good day.
No, thank you, Dehpue, and for the audience, we want to say thank you. We're here every Saturday now. It used to be 3 o'clock. Now we're here every Saturday uh, at 5. We didn't have the relay guy from Liberia today, Tio. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll be able to connect with him next Saturday to be on. But as I said, it's always a pleasure being here, and as we always say, regardless of what, if you're looking at whatever side of the political aisle you're on, whether you're opposition, a no position, hate position, or whatever position you're in, at the end of the day, we are all Liberian. Don't allow your political affiliation to burn, to allow you to burn bridges. At the end of the day, we're all Liberia. Liberia, I keep telling people, Liberia is very small, and we all know each other. So careful how you you disagree with people, and to what length you disagree with them. All right. Um, Without further ado, that's one thing we always say. As I said earlier, we are all Liberians, and we always like to leave you with that song. So thank you. Have the rest of your good weekend, and we will see you here next Saturday at the same time. Adios.
We are Labira. Labira is our home. Labira people. Inequality all we want. Labira oh. Inequality all we want. Labira, Labira.